June 8, 1944. 2 days after D-Day. Outside Caen, France. Corporal Léo Major of the Régiment de la Chaudière was advancing through a hedgerow when a German phosphorus grenade exploded 3 feet from his face. The blast threw him backward. White-hot fragments tore through his left eye, cheek, and jaw. He hit the ground screaming, clawing at his face as the phosphorus burned deeper into tissue. His squad mates dragged him to an aid station. The medic took one look and reached for morphine. "Hold still. You're going to the hospital." "Non," Major gasped through clenched teeth. "Bandage it." "I'm staying." "Your eye is destroyed. You need a surgeon." "Bandage it." The medic wrapped gauze around Major's ruined face, knowing the wound would likely get infected, knowing this stubborn French-Canadian would probably die from it. Major didn't die. He never did. Within a week, he was back in combat wearing a black eye patch, depth perception gone, half-blind, angrier than ever. His commanding officer tried to send him home. Major refused. "I can still shoot. I can still fight. One eye is enough." What followed would become the most unbelievable military record in Canadian history. Léo Major had always been trouble. Born in 1921 in New Bedford, Massachusetts, to French-Canadian parents, he'd grown up poor, scrappy, and convinced he was tougher than everyone else. When World War II started, he enlisted in the Canadian Army specifically because they had a reputation for hard fighting. He wanted combat. He got it. By June 1944, Major had already distinguished himself as a scout, aggressive, fearless, and completely insubordinate. His officers hated him. His fellow soldiers worshipped him. After losing his eye at Caen, something changed. He became even more reckless, as if daring the war to finish what it started. His first legendary exploit came in April 1945, during the liberation of the Netherlands. The Canadian Army was advancing toward the city of Zwolle, a strategic transportation hub still occupied by German forces. Intelligence estimated 300 to 400 German soldiers were dug in throughout the city, with machine gun nests, artillery positions, and orders to fight to the last man. The plan was a full-scale assault at dawn, artillery bombardment followed by infantry advance. It would level half the city and kill countless Dutch civilians caught in the crossfire. On the night of April 13th, Major approached his commanding officer with a different idea. "Sir, I can take the city tonight, alone." Captain Jean-Paul Gagnon stared at him. "You want to capture an entire city by yourself?" "Oui." "Major, you have one eye. You're proposing to walk into an occupied city filled with enemy soldiers and what exactly? Create chaos. Make them think we're already there in force. Scare them into retreating. This is insane. Give me one man, a driver. We'll be back by morning with the city liberated, or we won't be back at all." Gagnon studied Major's face, or the half of it that wasn't covered by an eye patch. The man was clearly unhinged. He was also their best scout, and his instincts had been right before. Take Corporal Arsenault. Radio back every hour. If I don't hear from you by 0400, I'm sending in the artillery. Major grinned. You won't need the artillery. At 2200 hours, Major and Corporal Willie Arsenault entered Zwolle on foot, moving through darkened streets toward the city center. Their plan, if it could be called a plan, was simple. Make as much noise as possible. Attack from multiple directions. Create the illusion of a large assault force. They started by ambushing a German patrol near the railway station. Major killed 2 soldiers with his Sten gun before the others could react. The survivors fled, shouting warnings about Canadian attackers in the city. Good. Let them panic. Major and Arsenault split up, moving to different neighborhoods. Over the next 3 hours, Major conducted a one-man terror campaign. He threw grenades into German command posts, set fires in ammunition depots, shot out streetlights, screamed orders in French, making it sound like entire squads were maneuvering through the streets. Every 20 minutes, he'd attack from a new direction. The Germans didn't know how many Canadians were in the city. They just knew they were being hit everywhere at once, that their positions were being overrun, that staying meant dying in the dark. At 0330 hours, Major spotted a German officer trying to organize a counterattack near the town hall. He walked straight up to him through the shadows. "You're surrounded," Major said, in broken German. His Sten gun pointed at the officer's chest. "Your choice. Surrender or die." The officer looked at this one-eyed madman standing alone in the street, looked at the fires burning throughout the city, heard the distant sounds of gunfire and explosions. He surrendered. By 0400 hours, German forces were in full retreat, fleeing northeast toward Germany. Major stood in Zwolle's central square, smoking a cigarette, watching the last enemy trucks disappear into the darkness. Arsenault emerged from a side street. Did we actually do it? The city is ours. When Canadian forces entered Zwolle at dawn, they found it liberated. No artillery bombardment necessary. No civilian casualties. Just one man with one eye and a death wish. The Dutch citizens who witnessed it couldn't believe the story. 1 Canadian soldier. Impossible. But the German after-action reports confirmed it. They'd retreated from Zwolle because they believed they were facing a major assault force. By the time they realized it was essentially one man, they were already gone. Major was recommended for the Distinguished Conduct Medal. When British Field Marshal Montgomery tried to present it personally, Major refused the award. "I don't take medals from a man who got soldiers killed at Dieppe," he said, referring to the disastrous 1942 raid where Canadian forces suffered massive casualties under Montgomery's command. His officers were horrified. "You don't refuse medals. You definitely don't insult British field marshals." Major didn't care. Give it to someone who wants it. But his legend was just beginning. A few weeks later, during the final push into Germany, Major and his reconnaissance unit encountered a heavily defended German position near the town of Küsten. The Germans had machine gun nests, mortar positions, and clear fields of fire. A frontal assault would be suicide. Major decided to capture it anyway. He crawled through a drainage ditch, emerged behind enemy lines, and attacked the position from the rear, alone. He killed 4 soldiers, captured the rest, and held the position until his unit arrived. His commanding officer was beyond words. "How are you still alive?" "I don't know," Major admitted. "I think God is too embarrassed to take me." He survived the war with 2 Distinguished Conduct Medals. He accepted the second one, a reputation as the craziest soldier in the Canadian Army, and a conviction that he was somehow immune to death. Then Korea started. In 1950, when North Korea invaded the South, Major, now in his 30s, married with children, volunteered to go back to war. His wife thought he was insane. She was right. November 1951, Hill 355, Korea. Major's unit was ordered to hold a strategic position against Chinese forces advancing in overwhelming numbers. During the night, Chinese soldiers overran a forward observation post. Rather than call in artillery and risk hitting his own men, Major grabbed his rifle and went to retake it himself. What followed was an 18-hour battle in which Major, alone, held the hill against repeated Chinese assaults. He fired until his rifle barrel glowed red. When he ran out of ammunition, he threw grenades. When he ran out of grenades, he used captured Chinese weapons. By dawn, the area around his position was littered with enemy dead. Chinese forces had pulled back, convinced they were facing a fortified platoon. It was one man with one eye who refused to die. Major survived Korea. He returned to Canada, worked as a pipe fitter, and lived a relatively quiet life. But the stories followed him. Journalists wanted interviews. Military historians wanted details. Young soldiers wanted to know his secret. "There is no secret," he'd tell them. "You just decide you're not going to die, and then you don't." In 2008, at age 87, Léo Major died peacefully in his sleep, the most violent death he'd ever experienced being one he didn't fight. His funeral in Montreal drew hundreds of veterans, Dutch citizens whose families remembered Zwolle, and soldiers who'd heard the stories and wanted to see if they were true. They were all true. The city of Zwolle erected a street sign in his honor, Léo Major. Every year on April 14th, they hold a ceremony commemorating the night one Canadian soldier liberated their entire city. His medals, the 2 Distinguished Conduct Medals he eventually accepted, are displayed in the Canadian War Museum in Ottawa, alongside a photograph of him wearing that black eye patch, looking every bit the pirate soldier he'd become. The museum placard includes his response when asked how he accomplished what he did. "I was too angry to die, and too stubborn to quit."